Hello, everybody. I'm Zeus Caravallo from ZK Research, and I'm here for another episode of ZKast. And I'm here with my co-host here, Chris Preimesberger, from editor emeritus of eWeek still. So, Chris, how you doing?
Okay, thanks. I'm feeling kind of collegial or academic with that title. So anyway, editor emeritus.
Yeah, you just need the hat or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So as soon as do you have tenure?
Oh, well, let me think about that.
So this week was kind of a big week in the world of IT, because it was Dell Technology World and the digital version of it. And Dell Tech Week is always a big week because you always get to hear the latest and greatest from Dell. This is the first one after the VMware split, though. And I want to start off talking a little bit about Michael Dell's keynote. It was kind of an odd keynote. It didn't have a lot of new products to it. I do think he talked a lot about societal trends, though, and he sort of gave the whole tech industry a pat on the back, saying that how the tech industry, like companies like Dell, helped avoid a complete societal economic meltdown. And that's a little strong, but I do think it was technology that helped us kind of get through the pandemic, and it's going to help us get come out the other side of this. So
no question about it. No question. Michael gave us some good examples of use cases too of this new tech, and use cases are great examples, real world examples of how this stuff works. And he was able to explain, Jeff Clark too, they were able to explain it pretty well.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things he talked about was the evolution of the IT department. And I have a quote here where he said, technology is no longer the IT department. It's now the entire organization. It's how you enable everything. And we've never been more central or more relevant. And I couldn't be prouder to be part of this community. And I thought that was sort of a prescient point in that, we've been saying for a long time that every company is a tech company, but that, certainly,
that's a pretty general term, it is. Yeah, it is. Every company is tech because people use computers and smartphones and all that. But Michael is right in that line of business employees now are helping design their own applications. They're adding features. You don't have to always go to the IT department to get something done. So the whole company is really participating in the IT system of the company, whether you like it or not. That's what it is. That's the way it is now.
Yeah, one of the parts of tech he did talk a lot about, though, was the edge, and certainly edge has become this. Edge is a bit of a weird term because it means everything now, frankly, that's not cloud. But he did cite a Gartner stat saying that only 10% of data today is processed outside the data center. However, by 75%, or by 2025, that'll be 75%, with much of that being out at the edge. And so Dell's been very busy integrating and creating new edge solutions with VMware. And actually, I thought he did a good job of actually explaining the Dell VMware split, because it wasn't, the two companies are still going to work together, but post breakup, they'll actually formalize a lot of the things that they've put in place. And so I think that's important for customers, because on our last ZKast, we did talk about the implications to Dell, and that maybe without VMware, they get out of lockstep with them, but that doesn't appear to be the case. And obviously, Michael's the chairman of both, right? So that's going to continue.
Michael's still going to own 41% of VMware too. That's a pretty healthy cut.
Yeah, especially when they're paying out that multi-billion-dollar dividend, so he'll get a good piece of that. So he also talked about, and I wasn't sure, you've been around for a while. What you think of the statement? He talked about the PC being our lifeline, and he did talk about how. I think in 2020, they shipped almost 143,000 PCs every day. That worked out to 99 every minute. And so, a lot of people look at PCs as being kind of the old device, because we're now more on these mobiles and tablets and things. But, although the downside of that, though, there's kind of a commodity. It's hard to really differentiate one PC from another unless you're really willing to pay. I've got a MacBook Pro here, which was, $5,000. So
I've tested enough PCs to know that they're very, very similar in what they do. Some are better at certain aspects of the PC than others. Some are lighter, some are heavier. All that. But I still think the PC is kind of like email. It won't go away.
Yeah.
Email is an important business tool and a personal tool, and so is a PC. Sometimes you just need to have a bigger screen to look at something closely, or to do a video conference rather than a cell phone, or a tablet. So I think there's still a big market. I think Michael's right. There's still a big market for PCs, and I think there will be for a while yet.
One of the issues he did bring up, which I'm not sure how we solve this, is he did talk about how in the U.S. alone there's 10 million students without a PC, 10 million in Japan, and over 40 million in Western Europe without a PC. So if it is that important and we're trying to democratize opportunity in the world, how do we close that gap? How do we get the millions of people out there without PCs to have PCs? And that's something I think Dell with their supply chain, nobody manages supply chain and things better than Dell. And, perhaps they should be looking at how you create an ultra low cost PC to be able to go get to those. So, because a lot of those people, in the underserved communities tend to have mobile only. And so that is a big opportunity for somebody to solve. Google tried to do that with Chromebook. Not really that successful, but that's certainly a gap in the tech industry that hasn't been solved yet.
I think it's a huge opportunity. I'm sure Michael knows about it. He's probably working on it right now. But you're right, an ultra low cost for underserved and for people who don't really have the money to buy a PC. Great idea, and it can only help Dell's image and business going forward.
Yeah, well, maybe you and I can start up a company that'll do that. So
okay.
The big news from the event, though, is Project Apex, right? So officially known as Apex now, which is really Dell as a service. I know, Chris, you wrote a pretty comprehensive article on eWeek. Why don't you tell us what Apex is?
Yeah, they introduced it last year, but they've been working on this for quite a long time. I don't exactly know how long. But, every company now seems to have its own platform. It's a general data management platform that can do lots of things. This is theirs. And what it does is it really kind of combines control of data storage services in the cloud and on premises. So if you're a company and you've got a data center or just some servers, housing data and company documents, you can hook that in to this management console, and then you can also hook in your AWS or Azure or whatever deployment in the cloud and see them both and be able to use them, mix and match whatever you need. That's a good thing. What else? They also have a custom solutions thing that Dell will work with you to figure out what your use case is and what other services you might need to get it done through their platform. And the platform itself, Apex, is managed totally by Dell. So you don't have to worry about, an instance in your data center or anywhere else. They will handle it. It's like a virtual part of your data center if you don't have a data center. So it looks, and also the other news from the first day of Dell Technologies World that was important is that Dell and Equinix are getting together to do a big partnership, and that's significant because Equinix is the world's largest independent data center owner and operator. So they've got in 20 countries data centers, and they're big, modern, and very powerful data centers that they use. They rent out for co-location services. They also have interconnection services too for customers that don't really need to store their data in the data center. They just want powerful connectors to different levels of the internet, and they provide that too. Equinix is really, really far ahead of its time right now as a data center builder, owner, operator, and doing a deal with Dell means that people in various countries can have their data close by, if necessary, in one of the Dell or Equinix data centers, and that's important to the new GDPR rules.
Yeah.
And so this is very, very good news for a lot of companies who are Dell customers or who are potential Dell customers.
Yeah, well, nobody does things in scale like Dell does. I know HP took a little poke at Dell by saying, welcome to the managed services game. I do think it's well timed, though. When you look at the trends in the industry, Chris, around data growth and things, I read a stat somewhere that said 90% of all the data created has been created in the last 2 years. So IT departments have kind of a tough task if you try and do things the traditional way. I can buy for today, which means I'm going to run out of capacity in a month, or I can buy for 2 years from now. And so I'm going to significantly overpay today, right? But I'll be able to grow into that. And who knows, I might run into that capacity sooner or later. But what Apex does is it lets customers buy their storage, their compute, things like that, what they need today. And then as they grow, they can continue to pay for it like a service. And so I think this whole everything as a service is becoming real. Cisco earlier this year announced network as a service, right? We've had, Amazon as their compute services. So it makes sense that Dell would want to get into the service game. I think one of the more important aspects of it, which you touched on in your story, was the Apex console, where it is a single pane of glass, so customers can manage the entire life cycle of all their Apex offering through one place. So that was this has been a long time coming for Dell. Michael's talked about Dell as a service for quite a while, so it's finally here.
Yeah, they've needed this, and like I said, they've been working on this for a while. It's very complicated to do under the hood.
Yeah,
but it remains to be seen now. It's going to get out there. People are going to use it. We're going to get reviews of it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts from the event?
No, those were the main things. Michael's keynote, Allison Dew, who was one of the executives there, explained Apex very well. And no, that was pretty much it. You can read the detail in eWeek.
Yeah, that's true. So check that out in eWeek. Next thing I want to talk about is Arista Networks. They announced earnings this quarter, and like we talked about with Juniper and Extreme last quarter, they posted good numbers. They did issue a cautionary statement about the chip shortage, though, and that does seem like it hasn't been an issue yet. But I think we have not yet seen the impact of the chip shortage, but I think it's coming. So I thought, as far as this quarter goes, though, Arista saw continued strength in their business. They had strong beats across the board. Their revenue grew 28%, EPS grew 24% year over year, albeit they had pretty easy comps before. I think the big thing for Arista, though, is everybody knows Arista is the company that serves the cloud titans. They grew their enterprise business quite nicely, too. And I think Arista has finally over the hurdle of understanding how to sell to enterprises. And so when you look at a lot of the marketing that used to come out of Arista, it used to be about big, deep buffers and elephant flows and things like that, things that mean a lot to the cloud titans, but frankly don't mean a lot to enterprises. And so they've invested a lot of money into enterprise. They've acquired some companies, Mojo Networks, things like that. They're still paying last to manage the Arista network through a cloud portal. It actually, you can manage their entire portfolio from Wi-Fi, switching, a data center. And I think Arista has done, like I said, a nice job of making the pivot to a company that's enterprise. I don't want to say enterprise first. They'll always be known as that company that serves the cloud titans, but certainly enterprise is a much bigger part of that. And I think, we will start to see Arista as a major enterprise player in the networking world, and that's certainly good for everybody. I have a lot of respect for the company. I know Jay Shrialal, their CEO, very well. They have been one of the most innovative companies since they launched over 15 years ago now, I think so.
Yeah, I knew Andy Bechtolsheim, who was one of the founders. And Andy was one of my favorite people. When I used to come to Sun Microsystems, he was one of the 4 founders of Sun. Brilliant guy, and a man who talks so fast, you have to really take fast notes to catch up with him because he thinks so fast. But he really did a fabulous job starting the company.
Yeah, well, it was Andy's influence there, I think, that really put that company on the map. When he does things, people notice. And so I think the fact that he managed to hire Jay Shri away from Cisco, he was one of the founders that really put the company on the map, and they've stayed that way. So,
absolutely.
Next thing I want to talk about is Juniper, and we talked about their earnings last week, but they came out with kind of an interesting announcement. Everybody talks about SASE today, right? Secure Access Service Edge, which is the coming together of networking and security.
Right.
They're taking a bit of a different approach to SASE. So instead of rolling out a whole bunch of new cloud-based security services or announcing a whole bunch of partnerships to fill the gaps, what Juniper has done is they've started the journey for their customers getting into SASE with management, right? So they announced this product called the Juniper Security Director Cloud, and it's designed to provide customers with that quote-unquote single pane of glass, which everybody has today, for managing security policies regardless of whether the service is running on-prem or in the cloud. And I think when I talk to customers about SASE, there's a lot of confusion of, do I need to have everything in the cloud? Do I need to have it on-prem? I might have a big investment of stuff on-prem, but I might want to move some stuff to the cloud. And so what Juniper's done is they've thought about this, and I kind of like to, and I bring this up, and there's lots of SASE announcements that we don't talk about, but I thought this was kind of unique because they looked at SASE from the operational standpoint versus the technology. And this shift is going to be, this is going to be a long shift, right? We're not moving to SASE overnight. But I do think from a Juniper perspective, the ability to have that end-to-end visibility, be able to look at policies across the board, and be able to manage things becomes important versus having everything just be, here's more and more security services, which has plagued enterprises in the past with a lot of inefficiencies. So, kudos to them for that.
Yeah, it's good to see the way companies are embracing this trend, and it's definitely a trend. But you're right; it's just in its nascent days, and we'll see how SASE develops going forward.
Yeah, frankly, I don't like the term SASE, but it looks like it's your state.
Yeah, so, you're right.
Next up on the docket, I know this is something that you brought up, was the IBM, right? They're doing something in the silicon space, right? So 2 nanometer silicon.
Yeah, can you imagine that? I mean, how small can you get? I mean, 2 nanometers it's like smaller than, from what I understand, smaller than a human DNA molecule. Yeah. It's like, what? Yeah. And this blueprint that IBM announced just today, as a matter of fact, will be eagerly looked at by all the chip manufacturers, for sure. And just to think how small these little chips or these little processors are. You can get 50 billion, that's with a B, transistors on a fingernail-sized chip. 50 billion. How in the world that they do that, I don't know. But 2 nanometers, there's not much else. There's not much left before going virtual, Yeah. But these chips, when they start being manufactured later this year, early next year, they're going to be in everything if they work correctly, which they probably will. IBM's got quite a history of designing chips. They don't make chips, of course, but they design them and they license them, license out the blueprints. They were among the first to implement the 7 nanometer and the 5 nanometer process. They've also been leaders by designing single cell DRAM and a lot of other planning. So they plan and design things pretty darn well.
So Chris, where will we see these being used?
Yeah, well, we won't see them on being built or manufactured until later this year, probably around Christmas, and then after that, early next year. But these things will probably follow just like the 5 nanometers and the 7 nanometer ones. They'll go into everything. They'll go into your laptop, your desktop, your phone, cars, satellites, and wherever they're needed, as long as they work. They will be powerful. They'll be low power, and they should be, at least according to the blueprints, they should be successful. We'll see.
Yeah, and from what I understand, it's been well documented that Moore's law is running out of steam. So obviously being able to get down to 2 millimeters is important. And it was the arrival of something called extreme ultraviolet technology that allows us to get this kind of density. And from what I understand, they're doing it by overlapping waves of light, basically, correct? I think how they're doing that. Yeah.
They've meaning Intel and Micron, for one example, about 7 years ago, came out with a thing called 3D Crosspoint, in which they were trying to go vertically with the chips to try to get more power into them, but that didn't really work very well, and we're not seeing the results there. but they keep going smaller with these, with these processors, and smaller seems to be okay so far. We'll see.
Yeah, well, pretty soon, you're right. We'll just have virtual processors, and there'll be nothing in there. So, all right. Anyways, so this brings us to the end of our show. I do want to touch on one more point, and it's a sad one. I found out last weekend that one of my good friends, Lee Doyle, who most people would know as the president and founder of Doyle Research, formerly of IDC, he was one of the SVPs there, passed away. He, from what I understand, he was kayaking and he had a heart attack, which is shocking to me because the guy was an extreme sports person. He was in better shape than almost anybody I knew. So, but Lee, not a lot of people know this. Lee tried to hire me at one time when I was at Yankee Group, but I couldn't work out my non-compete issue there. So I wound up staying at Yankee Group. But I always liked Lee. He was genuinely a very nice person. And I think, Chris, you've worked with a lot of analysts in the space, and some are nice people, some aren't nice people, but Lee was just a genuinely nice guy. He always took the time to say hello. He certainly enjoyed living life as well. And so, Lee, goodbye. You're gone, but you won't be forgotten. There was a whole bunch of analysts in this industry that worked for Lee, and other product people that, so in a lot of ways he lives on. So, yeah.
We all work with a lot of different people, but I'll tell you, it's so much more satisfying, worthwhile, and fun to work with people who are good people, who are good to you and kind and thoughtful. And I'm sure it sounds like he was one of those.
Yeah, he was. And so I'm going to wrap up this episode of ZKast with a moment of silence for Lee. So his picture come up and then we'll fade away. So anyways, Chris, thanks for joining me. I'll see you next week. But for now, let's just have a moment for Lee.